Think about a single gram of clay, that little speck we often just call dirt. Now get this. The surface area of that tiny amount, it can be bigger than an entire orchard.
Wow. Yeah.
That's kind of our launching point for today's deep dive, because what we commonly dismiss as, lifeless, it's really anything but.
Absolutely. It's a whole universe down there.
We're about to explore this universe teeming with more major categories of life than you'd find roaming the plains of the Serengeti. It's pretty wild.
It truly is a world unseen by most, yet, well, it underpins everything. We're using Regenesis, feeding the world without devouring the planet, as our guide today.
Right.
To sort of unlock the secrets held within the soil. Our aim is really to show you just how fundamentally important this seemingly simple substance is for the health of, well, our entire planet.
And this isn't just some abstract scientific curiosity, is it? I mean, understanding the complexities of soil seems absolutely vital.
It is.
If we want to grapple with some of the biggest issues we face, like feeding everyone and protecting the environment.
It's exactly. Food security,
Yeah.
environmental degradation.
Yeah.
It all connects back to the soil.
It's about getting down to the foundational level of a system we all depend on, really, whether we consciously think about it or not.
Precisely. And what makes the book so insightful, I think, is that the author blends, rigorous scientific research with firsthand experience, like tending an allotment, observing different agricultural methods. This gives us a really practical and kind of well-rounded understanding of the intricate processes at play beneath our feet.
Okay, so the book kicks off by looking at the humble allotment. Now, for many, that might just conjure up images of, homegrown tomatoes.
Sure, yeah.
But it's presented as something much more significant, almost like a self-contained ecosystem.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The allotment is shown as this microcosm, right? A self-organized community where people from all walks of life, and the book highlights the diverse community at the Oxford site, come together. And crucially, they share knowledge.
That knowledge-sharing part seems key.
It is. And it's worth remembering that in England, there's been a legal right to grow food on these allotments since 1908.
Oh, wow, since 1908.
Yeah, which has kind of inadvertently fostered these independent knowledge-sharing hubs. Pretty interesting side effect.
And even in this setting, this sort of idyllic picture of people growing food, there's a necessary element that might seem a bit harsh.
Yeah.
The pruning. Especially fruit trees. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, what's interesting here is the timing and the reason behind it.
Yeah.
Unlike your typical apple or pear trees that get pruned in winter.
Right, when they're dormant.
Exactly. Stone fruits like cherries, they need to be pruned when their sap is actively flowing, so spring or early summer.
Okay, why is that?
It's a crucial step to prevent diseases, things like canker and silverleaf curl. They're more vulnerable if you cut them in the damp cold of winter.
Makes sense.
So you have this explosion of blossoms, a real symbol of life and abundance.
Yeah, beautiful.
And yet you have to make these cuts, removing branches, maybe laden with flowers or even young fruit. The book calls it a kind of necessary desecration.
Huh. A necessary desecration. That's a powerful phrase. It shows that even nurturing growth involves some tough choices, some management.
Definitely. A good illustration of that tension.
So from that visible activity on the surface, the pruning and planting on the allotment, the book then takes a sharp turn downwards.
Right into the soil itself.
Focusing on this hidden universe teeming within the soil. It's frankly astonishing how much life is packed in there.
Absolutely. The book introduces us to some fascinating concepts, like the myrmecosphere.
The whatosphere.
Myrmecosphere,
Yeah.
MYRMECO. It's the zone of soils specifically influenced by ants.
Ants, okay.
Particularly yellow meadow ants. They're anthills. They're made from this surprisingly strong mixture of clay and their own saliva.
Seriously, clay and saliva.
Yeah, described as these incredibly complex structures like miniature towers with underground cellars that can extend quite far down. And what's a really neat detail is their close relationship with aphids. They essentially farm them underground for their honeydew.
Underground aphid farms run by ants. Okay, that's amazing.
It really is, and it's not just ants, of course.
No, I imagine not.
We also encounter nematodes. Now, when you think of nematodes, you probably just think of tiny worms, right?
Yeah, vaguely. Kind of microscopic worms, maybe pests.
Some can be, but many are vital. And their sheer numbers are just mind-boggling. They are incredibly abundant.
How abundant are we talking?
Billions in a small area. And they play this vital, if often unseen, role in the soil food web. The book points out their remarkable ability to reproduce very quickly.
Like how quickly?
Under the right conditions, their numbers can apparently multiply 12-fold in a single day.
12 times in a day.
Yeah.
That's exponential.
It really brings home the idea of this incredibly dynamic and active world right under our feet, just buzzing with life.
Yeah, the book really gives you that sense of disrupting this hidden world when you imagine digging into the soil. All those creatures scattering from the light.
Exactly, that visceral image of breaking into these subterranean spaces and seeing the speed with which these soil inhabitants disappear. It highlights how much they rely on that stable, dark environment.
And then finding the remnants of, well, what must have been some serious underground battles. Beetle wings, snail shells.
That's right, finding things like millipedes, scoops their armored plates, or beetle wings, empty snail shells.
Yeah.
It provides tangible evidence of the constant predation and struggle for survival happening just below the surface. It's a wild ecosystem in miniature.
And then comes this truly staggering thought, the one you mentioned earlier, that in a single handful of soil you can find more major branches of life.
More phyla, technically.
Right, more major groups than in the entire Serengeti. Can you even wrap your head around that level of biodiversity?
It's genuinely perspective shifting, isn't it? The book lists examples ranging from insects and crustaceans to mites, spiders, centipedes, millipedes, springtails,
Springtails, yeah. Those tiny things.
earthworms, nematodes, mollusks, and, many others, including vast domains of microbes. It forces you to reconsider where the real hotspots of biodiversity on our planet actually are.
We always think rainforests, coral reef.
And they are diverse, absolutely. But we tend to focus on the large, charismatic animals. The soil is where an incredible amount of fundamental biological diversity resides. It's foundational life.
Okay, so what allows this incredible abundance? How does the soil support so much life? It boils down to something surprisingly simple, right? Surface area.
Exactly that. The immense internal surface area within the soil is absolutely key.
That orchard example again.
Right. The example the book uses of fine clays is astonishing. Just 1 gram can have a surface area larger than your average orchard.
It's hard to visualize.
It is. But this vast network of surfaces provides countless tiny habitats, little niches, as well as binding sites for essential nutrients and water. That directly supports the teeming microbial and invertebrate life.
Makes sense. More space, more tenants. The book also makes a strong case for something else often overlooked. Fungi.
Oh, hugely important.
Yeah.
Fungi are presented as essential architects and engineers of the soil ecosystem.
Architects. How so?
Well, they form these intricate networks of thread-like hyphae.
Like the roots of the mushroom we see.
Kind of, yeah, but vastly more extensive underground. And these hyphae act like a glue, binding soil particles together into aggregates, little clumps.
Okay, and why is that clumping important?
It's critical for preventing erosion, stops the soil washing or blowing away. It also creates pores that help the soil soak up rainwater, like a sponge. And beyond that structural role...
There's more.
Oh, yeah. They're major players in the carbon cycle. They help lock up vast amounts of carbon in the soil, which has, pretty significant implications for climate change.
Right, soil carbon sequestration, that's huge.
Absolutely.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. It turns out plants aren't just passively sitting there taking stuff up.
Not at all.
They're actively engaging with the soil in some really surprising ways.
This is one of the most fascinating parts, I think. The revelation that plants deliberately release a significant portion. The book says anywhere from 11 to 40% of the sugars they produce through photosynthesis.
40%, that seems like a lot of energy to just leak out.
It does, but it's not just leakage, it's a directed process. They release these sugars, called exudates, directly into the soil through their roots. And sometimes it involves quite complex chemical compounds, not just simple sugars.
Okay, so they're deliberately leaking sugars. Why? What's the point? Is it some kind of payment?
Precisely. That's a great way to think of it. These sugars act as a primary food source for the vast community of bacteria and fungi that live in the rhizosphere.
The rhizosphere, that's the area right around the roots.
Exactly. That narrow zone of soil immediately surrounding a plant roots. It's teeming with microbial life. And in return for these sugars, these microbes perform essential services for the plants.
Like what kind of services?
Well, unlocking crucial nutrients, for one. Things like iron and phosphorus are often locked up in the soil in forms plants can't use. Certain bacteria can break those bonds and make them available.
So the plant feeds the bacteria unlock minerals for the plant.
It's a classic symbiosis, yeah. They also break down complex organic matter into simpler forms the plants can absorb. It's this crucial exchange.
And let's not forget the really amazing ability of certain bacteria.
Hmm.
Nitrogen fixation.
Ah, yes, absolutely foundational. Taking nitrogen gas, which is abundant in the air but useless to plants.
N2, right? Very stable.
Very stable. These bacteria convert that inert nitrogen gas into plant-usable forms like nitrate and ammonium. The book emphasizes that literally no other part of the food web, no plant, no animal, can do this.
Wow. So life on land pretty much depends on these tiny nitrogen fixers.
To a huge extent, yes. Without bacterial nitrogen fixation, terrestrial ecosystems would look vastly different, if they could exist at all in their current form.
It's almost like plants can, I don't know, communicate with these bacteria, especially when they're struggling.
That's a very insightful way to think about it.
Hmm?
The book describes how plants, when they're stressed, say by drought or high salt levels in the soil,
Uh-huh.
they release specific chemical signals through their roots, different signals for different stresses, almost like a distress call.
And bacteria respond to these calls?
Yes, these signals attract particular types of bacteria to their roots, bacteria that have the specific abilities to help the plant cope with that specific stress, maybe helping retain water or dealing with salt.
That is incredible. It's targeted help.
It is. It's a highly sophisticated interaction.
This leads to this really powerful concept the book uses, the rhizosphere, as the plant's external gut.
Yes. I love that analogy.
It really reframes how you think about a plant's biology, doesn't it?
It does. Because the rhizosphere, this intensely active biological zone right around the roots, is just as crucial to a plant's health and overall functioning as its own internal tissues, its leaves and stem.
It's where all the nutrient uptake and microbial negotiation happens.
Exactly. It's the site of this constant exchange of resources and information that's vital for the plant's survival and growth. An external digestive system, in a way.
And this interconnectedness, it extends even to the plant's immune system. It's not just operating independently.
Not at all. This is another fascinating parallel. A plant's immune system has co-evolved alongside these soil bacteria over millennia,
Okay.
and it's constantly being trained and primed by them throughout the plant's life. The book draws a compelling analogy to our own human gut microbiome.
Right, where the bacteria in our gut help train our immune system.
Precisely. The bacteria residing in our intestines play a critical role in educating our immune cells, helping them distinguish friend from foe. It seems something very similar happens between plants and their root microbes.
So, the health of the soil, the microbes living in it, isn't just about providing physical support and nutrients.
No, it goes way beyond that.
It directly influences a plant's ability to defend itself against diseases and pests.
Exactly right. Just as a diverse and balanced gut microbiome contributes to our own health and resilience,
Yeah.
the microbial community in the soil determines whether that soil is suppressive, meaning it actually helps plants resist disease or conducive to disease, making plants more vulnerable.
Suppressive or conducive soils, so you could have two identical plants, but in different soils, one gets sick and the other stays healthy because of the microbes.
That's the idea, yes. And there's even fascinating research mentioned exploring the agricultural equivalent of fecal transplants.
You're kidding. For soil?
Sort of. Using healthy, disease-suppressing soil or microbial cocktails derived from it to inoculate unhealthy areas, trying to restore that beneficial microbial balance to fight off pathogens.
That's wild. The future of farming might involve soil probiotics.
It's certainly an active area of research. It all paints this picture of soil as this incredibly dynamic, complex, self-organizing system.
Yeah, far more than just inert dirt or minerals.
Precisely.
Ugh.
Microbes are constantly at work, creating those soil aggregates we talked about, those clumps of soil particles. They bind them together using carbon-based polymers, essentially sticky substances they produce.
They're building their own homes.
Basically, yes, building their own microhabitats. The book draws an analogy to a wasp's nest or a beaver dam, a complex physical structure constructed by living organisms for their own survival.
Okay, I could see that.
But the sheer complexity of soil, with its intricate network of pores and passages at multiple scales, arguably dwarfs even those examples.
It's almost like that concept of dust in Philip Pullman's novels.
That's a great comparison the book makes. This idea of matter behaving in complex ways, spontaneously organizing itself into coherent worlds based on these fractal-like patterns. Soil has that quality.
And the deeper you delve into understanding soil, it seems, the more you realize just how much more there is to learn. It's like peeling an endless onion.
Absolutely. Every question you ask about soil seems to lead to 10 more questions. It highlights the incredible web of interconnectedness of all life on Earth.
That John Muir quote comes to mind.
When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe.
Exactly that. It feels particularly true for soil.
It really does. The book concludes with the powerful thought that soil might very well be the most complex living system on our planet, more complex than a reef or a rainforest because it integrates geology, chemistry, and this staggering biological diversity.
It really forces us to reconsider our common perception of soil, doesn't it? We so often just think of it as, well, dirt, something passive, maybe even dirty in a negative way.
Yes, and the book makes a powerful case for shifting that view, moving from seeing soil as a dead, inert substrate to understanding it as a vibrant, living ecosystem.
We need to get past just seeing it as something to anchor roots in and pour synthetic chemicals onto.
Right. And acknowledging our often negative, almost squeamish reaction to the creatures within the soil, particularly things like worms or insects.
Yeah, the creepy crawlies.
Exactly. It's quite ironic when you consider how fundamentally we depend on them and the entire soil food web for our own survival. They're doing essential work.
So ultimately, gaining this deeper understanding, appreciating this hidden world beneath our feet is absolutely critical for our future, for the planet's future.
That's the core message, I think. Understanding soil isn't just an academic pursuit. It's not just for gardeners or farmers. It's essential for everyone.
Because it impacts everything.
It impacts how we feed ourselves sustainably, how we manage water, how we tackle climate change, how we avoid further damaging the natural systems that support all life, and how we protect the incredible biodiversity of our planet. As the book argues, in many ways, the future of life on Earth truly lies underground.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the frankly mind-blowing world of soil, what's the key takeaway? If someone remembers just one thing.
For me, I think the most impactful idea is simply the sheer density and diversity of life that exists within the soil. That thought we keep coming back to.
The handful of soil versus the Serengeti.
Yeah, or even just the idea that a single teaspoon of healthy soil can contain more living organisms, mostly microbes, but still than there are people on Earth.
More life in a teaspoon than people on the planet.
Right. It's truly mind-boggling. I hope that maybe gives you, the listener, a completely new perspective next time you walk on grass or dig in a garden. Think about what's teeming just inches below.
That's definitely a powerful image to hold on to. It really makes you appreciate what's happening down there in a whole new light. It's clear this deep dive has only, well, scratched the surface.
Oh, absolutely.
Ugh.
Unintended, perhaps.
Huh, maybe. But seriously, there's a whole universe of knowledge still waiting to be explored down there.
Absolutely. This has just been a brief glimpse into a vast and utterly essential realm. We'd really encourage you to continue exploring this topic. Maybe read Regenesis, or simply take a closer look, maybe literally, at the soil in your own environment.
Get your hands dirty, perhaps.
Why not? You might be amazed by what you start to notice about this hidden world beneath our feet.